Welcome, ghouls, ghoulettes, and guesties to GonstFM Off Air, the official podcast companion to 66.6 GonstFM, the internet radio station dedicated to the band Ghost and the wider Gonst community. I'm Papa X.
And I'm Uncle Ghoul.
And we are back once again with our Which Images series, in which we explore the music videos of the band Ghost. And today we are continuing with our Meliora era, and this is From the Pinnacle to the Pit, directed by Zev Deans.
This is a really interesting video, and it's one of my favorite videos for a couple of reasons. Well, I say it's one of my favorite videos. It's not one I go back to often, but it's one that I kind of appreciate for how perfectly in the era it feels. It's a great tone setter, whereas Cerise was a good tone setter in it being a unique kind of video that's more produced. Where this is a very different approach, as we mentioned last week. This video comes across as both an homage to classic era films, but it also sums up so well the vibes of this album cycle to me. Because this album cycle to me is like golden age of Hollywood, silent films, and, you know, the elegance and almost mystery of that era. And this video, by using those actual films in it, as opposed to it all being a shot or, you know, a in-house production thing, it uses existing footage, is something that I think is really interesting and has such a unique vibe to it compared to the video we just saw.
I know we bring this up a lot with Papa Emeritus III, but it does often feel like Universal Monsters pops up, which, again, that's around this same era. It's the golden era of cinema, like you just mentioned, you know, with like, you know, films from the 20s all the way to like the 50s. From, you know, I just dropped the 20s reference, everybody, and I didn't repeat the lyrics, so you should be proud of me. Just
character
saying.
growth.
Yeah, exactly. So from the 20s all the way to the, not the 30s, to the 50s and the 60s in this era of cinema. And it's very prevalent here, especially the fact that this music video uses footage from a 1930 film called Madame Satan, which you, as a Ghost fan, you the listener, might know or might not know that Papa 3 had a t-shirt with Madame Satan on it, and it's actually a really cool shirt. It's a rarity, so if you have one, hell yeah, brother.
And if not, go collect one. Go to the merch groups and try and find one right now.
That's right.
Christmas gifts.
Absolutely. And the other movie, or film, I should say, is a 1949 educational film called Act Your Age. So it's cool to see like what they put into this music video, because it's kind of oddball, but it works.
It works really well. And it's very interesting because we don't see Papa until a good point into the video, which is a juxtaposition from the last video we had where we see Papa right away. A representation of Papa, at least, right? It takes a little bit. There's hints throughout of the crucifixes and stuff that are kind of edited into the pre-existing film. But then we get, you know, as the video reaches its climax, we get our full look of Papa, which is also our first look at Papa 3 in a music video.
That's right.
It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, you know, is that it took to the second video to see Papa in a music video. Compared to when we did this series, we were talking about Secular Haze. The first video is just all Papa, whereas this took a little bit into the era to show Papa. And even so, I think it's interesting. I know we're kind of jumping around in the video here, but like to touch back to our Mass of the Evil One series that we did, we see Papa wearing that early Meliora face paint mask. And it coincides with when that last video would have came out, they would have still been using the premiere night mask. And so this would have been the first version of what we now know as the iconic Papa 3 paint, which was, you know, a copy of the mask that was skin tone and had grease paint put on of the face paint of what would become the kind of more iconic design going forward with the other designs. And I think it's very interesting because there's a lot of debate online. You know, people say Papa 3 is not wearing any face paint in this video, but if you look closely, you can tell that it is indeed that grease paint Meliora mask that we featured on our Instagram and talked about in that episode that he was wearing on tour at that time, likely probably filmed on an off date from the tour. And I think it's very interesting because it's a very different looking Papa 3 than we see later. It's much more gritty and messy, and it fits so well within the context of these old films and Universal Monsters and the way that makeup would have been applied. If you think of like iconic makeup like Jack Pierce and that type of Wes Moore makeup, you know, early special effects designs, it fits very well in that kind of environment, and it makes him fit so naturally into the video.
Yeah, and especially with the color grading they went with, style wise, it's very washed out. But it's presented as quote black and white, but there's very like little amounts of blacks, grays, and yellows, and shit like that. But it looks great. There's some type of quality to it that it feels like it is vintage, obviously, because it's from specific eras in time. But I feel like the color grading that they chose to layer on these is great. They matched really well, especially with the footage that they shot of Papa 3, and then like the digital stuff with the skyline and the lights and the lightning and everything.
And I love how, and not to hark on that mask, but anyone who knows me knows I'm a mask guy. Like you said, that very washed out and great. That's how the mask is, it translates so well to if you were to watch this video and then go see them live. We get this look a lot of times with Papa where the face paint is neon white and black. It's very stark colors that almost don't look like face paint as it looks like paint. Like it's very pigmented, and face paint doesn't behave that way. Here it's that kind of grayish white mix. You can see the skin tone peeking through it, which works so well when you put it into this black and white kind of color grading thing that it looks so real and natural. It doesn't look like someone wearing a mask. Papa looks so real, and it's a perfect introduction, I think, for me to this new character, this new era of seeing this kind of old style, and you think of at the time how they were portraying Papa in the shows. This was before he became a little more goofy and flamboyant. He was much more like Papa 2 in those early shows where he wore the robes for the entire shows for a lot of those festival dates before the tour started. And a lot, you can find like the Leeds festival date, and he doesn't speak much. He wears the robes the entire time. He's kind of a little more imposing, and it fits so well in this to introduce him in that way.
Yeah, he goes. He started out like Count Dracula, kind of. You know what I mean? And then he wound up becoming Count Chocula.
Just like every Papa afterward.
Yeah.
It started a progression there.
Yeah, Cardinal Copia is like Frankenberry with his big old burgundy ass suit on his shit.
They get more and more like the Count from Sesame Street, Count Von Count, as they go along. A little less Dracula, a little more Count Von Count.
Well, no, he goes Count Chocula, and then Cardinal Copia is Frankenberry. You see, Boo Berry is Papa 4 because of the blue robes and stuff like that. So, so on and so forth. You can
assign all of our monster cereals. General Mills should sponsor Ghost.
That's right.
I think that'll be. I think that we'll have Papa cereals next for next Halloween. We had the Muppet ones this year. We'll have the monster cereal next year.
Be sure to eat your cinnamon ghost crunch out there, everybody.
Is it Cheerios?
Yeah. Well, no, Jerryos is like geriatric Jerryos for Papa Nil.
We'll just get Papa Nil in the box. Shardios.
Yeah, exactly. But, that's why it's chocolate flavored. So Anyway, back to
the video.
Yeah.
Enough of our yapping. But yeah, I love seeing, the shots early on in this video. First up, like the Ghost logo. Right at 3 seconds in, we get this great kind of marble Ghost logo, and it's got Ghost in, and that immediately, and then the title of the song, of course, but it's so immediately striking.
I would love to point something out about that, which I think is really cool. It's Ghost in, but I don't know if this was like an intentional design, but if you kind of look at the word in, not quite, but it almost looks like the Roman numeral 3.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too at first. And I was like looking, I was like, wait a minute, is that, yeah. It's also really cool seeing the Ghost logo in 3D like that. Like we see the Ghost logo in 3D a lot, but we don't often see it from that angle, from the side like that. And looking that sculpted, you know what I mean? Like obviously those are the contours of the Ghost logo where it's always this kind of 3D thing, but this is a full 3D rendering of like if you sculpted it in stone, which is really cool with that kind of washed out light in the background. And then the Pinnacle for the Pit logo comes, Pinnacle and Pit come from up and bottom screen, and then the rest of the words appear. And it's in that really kind of like Tesla coil font,
Yeah.
I don't know what the word is, or like what you would use, but like.
Well, no, that's exactly what it is, because there's a lot of elements of this video that give Tesla, because like that's the lightning and everything. That's exactly
not the company that makes cars, but like
no, we're talking about Nikola Tesla,
like the good one. In case anyone was confused.
Yeah.
Our younger listeners.
And I love the little parts like in the Act Your Age segments where they've like taking the footage and they crossed it over with like the kid drawing the crucifix on the desk, and then like when the letters being handed over to the headmaster, like very obviously superimposed Papa 3 crucifix, like floating on top of the card and shit. It's like really funny.
It is, and there's actually a really great shot too of like the kid is sketching on this table or on it looks like on the into the desk, right, and he does sketch the perfect contour of that crucifix. That's a good editing, like the editing is really not something to scoff at, but while at the same time, other shots look horrible, in a good way, it's like campy,
Yeah.
It's floating over the paper, as you say, as he's bringing that card up, the paper, but there's something about it that fits so well with the aesthetic that we've already established for Ghost.
Yeah, I think we've said this a bunch of times where like the Papa 3 era is almost the perfect combination of goof and serious.
Yes. They started to so this is my own personal opinions and I'm going to drop them here. I think that Ghost sometimes leans a little too heavily into the comedy and forgets some of their spookier roots. But while there's a transition to be seen, and you can see it in the videos, where Opus Eponymous, in my opinion, was the only era to where there wasn't as much comedy. It was portrayed in a much more serious way, almost too serious to a way to where it became comedic. There's a couple of typical try-hard metal things happening in that cycle, right? But, that's how it goes. Infestissimum added a little bit more comedy into the mix with some of the videos, the propaganda, especially at that time. And Meliora took that tenfold as well. But all three of those kept a degree of old school horror and old school kind of horror comedy, that vibe and spookiness that as the cycles went on, the spookiness went away for just comedic kind of, maybe Halloween tinged videos, as the chapters and the music videos go along and more glam and all this. Here, there's this dark elegance that was so prevalent in those early eras of Ghost that you really can't shake. It's so a part of these. And I think they had cracked the balance beautifully this era.
Yeah, it's almost too perfect, actually.
It is, and in a way that I would almost say that it's the peak.
Yeah.
I don't think that we've talked about this before. I don't think that you can top this. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's like I said, it was Kiss's Destroyer, and I know you had comparisons too. It's that when you think of iconic Ghost, you think of this most likely. This is the designs of the choices, and this video exemplifies it because it's just, who would have thought to do this? It's such a visual striking thing. This isn't just a performance video or anything else. This is an art piece of editing classic cinema together that shows the inspirations that Ghost have and what brought them to where they are and what inspired them to create the projects that they create. It's wearing their influences on their sleeves so much so that it's not just a reference. It's blatantly using footage from films that probably inspired them. It wouldn't shock me at all if Tobias, growing up saw, found a copy online somewhere or a VHS tape of Madame Satan, as a iconic occult film. And, that was influential. And it fits so well because the vibes of this all fit so well with what we see from these costumes and the characters. Like, there's a lot of elements in this cycle in general that are in this video, like the costuming of, as we get to around 2:35 in the video, and there's this theatrical scene of a dance montage happening on stairs, is not uncommon to what you would see in a Ghost video if they produced it. It almost makes you wonder if you wouldn't know that this was produced directly for the video. It's such a perfect match. And that type of old vaudeville, the mask that she wears, with the sparkles and the horns and everything, is not uncommon to something that would have been designed by Jerry Constantine. It's not too far from the Eyes Wide Shut masks that are also heavily inspired the Ghoul mask for this cycle. It fits so well. And it is something that Ghost has always had too, of having a feminine presence to it and a strong feminine figure being a huge standpoint of their lyricism and what they view as the rebellious side of Satanism, right?
Yeah. Yeah, to your point about how everything design-wise looks great, and that should be a testament to Zev Deans and everybody else that worked on this video, is how whatever they shot for this video to match up with the old film footage was very well done. Great attention to detail, great attention to the era that it was trying to replicate, no matter which piece it was that they were shooting for. It looks great all around. I don't think you could do this type of video and it's not even just looking back at this being for this era, but I don't, even now, hell, even then, I wouldn't think you could do something like this for any of the past or future eras. There's no way it works with the music or the Papa, as it were.
It works well because this video could easily be shot down as being low budget. And people probably do think that way, in that it is not all originally shot. It's just old edited video and some of the effect. But that is the beauty of it. It's a stylistic choice, and it shows that they went for this choice for a reason, not just for budget reasons or anything like that, because it's coming off the heels of a fully produced short film, essentially, with Cerise. But it also still, while being completely stylistically different, still perfectly bleeds into the same feeling of old school horror. Older school horror, of course, but it still bleeds into old school horror and those types of tropes and that feeling of a story being told. And once you get to the payoff of this video, I think for Ghost fans, which is, we see the man stumble and fall, and out of his body rises Papa Emeritus III. And that shot in general, as he reaches for his mitre, and before he does that, right, he kind of, this Dracula-esque, rising out of the body in the transparency. And we get that first shot of him just looking in at the camera, probably around 318. It is such a perfect introduction to a new Papa in a new era. I mean, it's like, you really can't beat that. There's something about it that it's so stark because we're coming off of Papa Emeritus II. It's instantly clear that there's a new energy to Ghost, and there's a younger energy. Well, this guy looks old. This is an old looking motherfucker. He, at the same time, looks so much more driven and full of life, and that you really get the vibe, okay, this is a new era and new things are coming. And I think it's great that we don't see him much at the end. He ascends, he gets his mitre, he suits up in this Batman epic moment, almost,
This fucker leaps a tall building within a single bound.
Yes.
He's doing that Superman thing again.
Shooting lightning bolts out of his fingers. And, it is one of the coolest shots ever, and there's always this motif of Papa flying, and even on the Opus cover and stuff. And it's just something that I don't know if you ever get this, but I always got the vibe of Papa 3 that he's this old, I don't want to say mobster, but old Italian man from he could have been played by Marlon Brando, and he could have easily fit in all those movies. And there's this old Hollywood type, maybe older man who was like Bela Lugosi, he was in these movies back in the day, and now he's doing this very refined, you're in the presence of old Hollywood royalty, and putting him in this almost puts a star power, it puts a degree of credibility to the aura he brings.
There's a specific era that I was in the back of my head thinking of, and it has to do with Sinatra and all those people like that.
Yes. There's a very Rat Pack.
Thank you. That's exactly it. Yep. That's exactly what I was looking for.
And so I loved, when I was a kid growing up, one of my favorite celebrities was actually Dean Martin. And there's that same sense of, and they called him the King of Cool, and there's that sense of just smoke a cigarette, drink a glass of wine, just the coolest guy in the room at all moments type thing, but also maybe a little bit older, and there is a degree of kind of coolness you get as you get older. Everyone out there, don't be afraid of getting old. It's good. The older you get, the cooler you get, the more wisdom you get, but you get that kind of refined wine, taste of, think of Marlon Brando in his later years, and even Dean Martin, when he got older and his hair was a little whiter and he was in those cool snazzy jackets or Sinatra, it's that same type of vibe of you see an old Hollywood star and you're like, I don't know what movie you were in, but you were a legend, and I can just tell by the energy that you're bringing off.
Yeah, it's just the way he carries himself.
It is, and he had that on stage so much, always, with this kind of, I think a lot of people bring it as just flamboyant, but the energy is not just flamboyant, it is...
there's some regalness there, too.
Regalness. Yeah, and this film, I have to call it a film. It's not just a music video. It feels like a film. It's so theatrical in that. The way it comes across, he looks as if he's coming into this world with a extensive film career behind him.
Dude is king shit. Let's be real.
Yeah, this is not a new Papa entering the scene and being like, okay, here I am in a video. This is a Papa who feels like he's been Papa for a while, and he owns that shit. And we get to that ending shot at around 4 o'clock of the crucifix below, and him floating above, and all the searchlights and the Tesla coils and all this crazy stuff, and it's perfect.
Not to jump ahead too far, because actually, like, the next music video we will be getting into is Square Hammer, believe it or not, everybody.
Mhm.
And I have noticed a lot of similarities between this video and that one in terms of just the way that it's now Square Hammer like leans more into the green aspect of like the color grading and stuff like that, but it still has very much this washed in a different color, mind you, like a different washed out feel with these grandiose looking effects and old Hollywood and things like that. But I really love the authenticity of this one, and it's not just because it uses old footage, but again, going back to the part of the conversation where everything that got shot for this was matching that. It's so authentic, and I think that's what gives this video the credibility.
Yeah, it's a precursor to Square Hammer in a lot of ways, even if not intentionally, but I'm sure it was, because that's the visual style they went for this cycle. It makes it also cohesive. It's why you can put this song over so many like old Universal horror movies. And usually when we do this series, we don't talk about the song much because we've already talked about the songs in our album reviews, which you can check out on the channel here. There's a playlist for that. But I do have to mention that, like, I think that Pinnacle as a song fits this video so well. Whereas, like, Cerise, in some ways, I think you could have put a lot of songs over it. Now, of course, there are the moment that is so iconic that fits so well there. But sometimes the video doesn't necessarily match up with the song perfectly. The song works so perfectly with that triumphant guitar tapping that comes in as Papa makes his ascend. And the song gets so bombastic and triumphant. It works so well musically, as if the song is a score for the video. And it doesn't feel like a music video in the way of like, oh, we're performing to a track and some storyline is happening. It feels like the music is scoring this film.
I often enjoy when a music video makes the song take a backseat, weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those examples.
There's two types of music videos you can make in my book. There is a music video where it is a performance shot video, and it's, of course, intercut with maybe, you see every once in a while the band performing, and there's a storyline happening with some actors. And then there's a type of music video where the video itself is a short film and the song scores it.
Those are my favorites.
And mine too. And this goes into the latter half of that. This is not a video where you almost can just put it on and forget about it, and then the song is what you're listening to. The song is just as instrumental to the vibe as it is. And it's really important to that. Like, it scores and tells the story. And you have to pay attention with the writing on the screen. It's telling the story that's being happened. It gives, and hopefully this gives younger people who don't know about this type of stuff an appreciation of silent films and to go look, because there's a lot of great silent films out there. Like, one of my favorites still is Phantom of the Opera, the original, Universal Monsters Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney. And I love all those Universal monsters and the early classic films from that time period. And so, maybe this is a gateway for some people out there to go check out some of those classic films and even check out Madam Satan and maybe learn more about old cult movies from that time period,
Yeah, because a lot of these films that we're talking about are, if they're not already, they're pretty close to being in the public domain because they're so fucking old.
Just go on Internet Archive and search, and you'll find, I'm sure, most of these. I'm pretty sure you can find almost all of these, and you can watch them in their original form, how they're meant to be enjoyed, and go in with an open mind and try and see what you can get out of it and appreciate it for its historical time. I know for some people it's hard to watch old films because it's so different and you have to really pay attention, and they're not as mindless, and there's, it's a very different way of what we're used to for movies, because they're not movies, they're films. There's a difference in the feel to them. But there's also such a antiquity and a warmth to them that is so special, especially to those of us who love horror and love the occult and love weird things, and were monster kids growing up and, would get, famous monsters of Filmland, and all that type of stuff. And we're nerdy about that type of stuff and love Creature from the Black Lagoon and Dracula and all the classic Universal monsters and other films that we're doing, other film companies that were making monster movies too, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and all those classic films. It so shapes Ghost in so many ways. So I think it's definitely worth I encourage anyone listening to go check out those, go to your local Walmart and find a classic collection of old films, and try and watch them, because they're so much that we can learn and help us appreciate videos like this more.
Hell, go to your local library. 9 times out of 10, your local library will have this stuff, and you can check it out for free.
Think of that, yeah. So absolutely, and find all these old things, I think that one thing that I love about Ghost that I don't talk about often, and I love, is that it gives us an appreciation for younger generations to find things that are old, right? I hear people talk all the time about, oh my gosh, Ghost is doing something so mind-blowing and new. And no, they're not. They never have. I love Ghost, but they are not an original band. You can find anyone who has done everything they're doing in every era at another time period. And that's not a bad thing. It works then and it works now, and it shows how timeless stuff is.
Correct.
If you love Skeletor, go back and listen to old 80s music. Go listen to like some Kiss albums from the 80s. Like, so many of these songs, like King of the Mountain off of, I think it's Asylum. I could be wrong. I'm a fake Kiss fan of the 80s, but I'm a 70s Kiss guy. But, that track could easily be a Ghost song. Even like, Scorpions. We were talking about when we did our album review series, we talked about how there's heavy influences of Skid Row and like Guiding Lights, and you can go and find that. There is direct references all over Ghost, on the album covers, on the t-shirts, on everything, to literature and to films that you should be watching and checking out. And it will help in your enjoyment of Ghost. When you know where it comes from and you see those homages, it just hits so much better.
Yeah.
So it's so much more. If you're ever like, we as fans want more content. They're showing us plethora of content of bands and inspirations and films and directors and media that we can go back in and kind of discover and open our minds with if we haven't seen it,
Yeah, and I love when bands do that, because it's not like, a lot of people are quick to say, oh, they're ripping this off or they're ripping this off. And I don't ever see it as a ripoff. I see it as an homage, and also then be like, they're sitting here like, let us teach you like what came before us and what inspired us. And you may not have heard about it, so you should check it out too.
Absolutely. It's one of the things, if you love Ghost, like I tell people this all the time, there's other bands doing it and that did it, that inspired Ghost. Like, go listen to old Motley Crue. Go listen to Kiss, Guns N' Roses, like Def Leppard, all these bands that Ghost are working with or talking about or mentioning, or these films. Like, if you want right here, right now, go watch Spinal Tap. Like, go watch, like, that could be a whole other episode. But I think it is a important topic of like, when we watch this, is like, and they're showing you direct historical films that are important, and they're using them in these videos, that we can go back and look at those. And that is something that you can further your fandom with by going and watching.
Yeah, I mean, even like the covers for some of the singles and stuff like that too, like Majesty from this album is based on King Kong. It's all these classic era films and classic songs that inspired the band. And I know we keep saying, a lot of this stuff, in many episodes, but it's just true. Like this band, this band bleeds nostalgia in a good way.
And there's so many people out there who, for people who are older like us, there's nostalgia in that. We remember it. But it's also, I think, sometimes we forget that this band blew up on TikTok with young people who may have never heard. Like, actually, I can say that for a fact. In my last year, I've shown many people Def Leppard for the first time who are Ghost fans, who have never heard of Def Leppard in their life, or had never heard of Kiss, or never even heard of Guns N' Roses or AC/DC.
There is a huge reason why whenever I run the GonstFM Station Head shows, which if you haven't been to one yet, you definitely should, because we're doing New Year's Evil 3 on December 31st. That is a big reason why whenever I run these shows, 9 times out of 10, I play bands that are Ghost adjacent or have been influential to the band, or bands that are inspired by Ghost, because it all collectively coincides with one another. In fact, not to get off on a tangent too hard, but this year's New Year's Evil broadcast on that night is going to feature heavily a lot of Ghost music, obviously, but I'm very much diving into different eras of rock and roll that inspired Ghost. It's going to be stuff like, we've mentioned Skid Row, they're going to be there. Def Leppard, that's going to be on there. Rush is going to be on there. There's a ton of bands that inspired Ghost that if you listen to them side by side, and I've purposely arranged some of these songs to be played with Ghost's music that sounds like it, you will hear the influence back to back, and it's irrefutable. There's no fucking way that you can deny any of that shit. And it's great, because I think people ought to be listening to these songs. They should be watching these movies. There's so much more to ghost than meets the eye. And that is not just a Transformers reference.
No, it's really the gift that keeps on giving. And I think that if you take anything out of this episode and this music video, is that it is showing you history that we can go back and appreciate. And I think that's a really magical thing. And that's a really magical gift that this video gives us, is it gives us 2 new films that we can check out. You might not like them, but you might learn something from them, or at least to appreciate them. And I think it's really important that everyone goes and checks out old media and you don't let that die.
Exactly. And hopefully 10, 15 years from now, if podcasts are actually still a thing, there might be 2 goofball dumbasses that like another particular band that this band inspired. And then they're going to be talking about this band's music like we're talking about Def Leppard and AC/DC and Kiss and Guns N' Roses and Skid Row and like all these other bands and films that inspired these music videos. Maybe something here is inspiring something 20, 30 years from now. And they're talking about this. The same way we're talking about these films and these videos and these songs.
Everything is cyclical, as Tobias Forge would say. And I think this video proves it, because in 2015, we're watching an old classic film from the 30s and still being just as enthralled as we were. Audiences will always be enthralled by good media, no matter how you remix it. At the end of the day, that's the beauty of the Pinnacle of Fit video, is that it perfectly takes something old, appreciates it, adds something new without devaluing it, and introduces it to new audiences. And I think that is an incredible win on behalf of Zev Deans, on behalf of the entire crew behind the video, on behalf of the band Ghost, is they've successfully introduced classic media and obscure occult media to mainstream audiences. So much so that we're now seeing Madam Satan playing in Hot Topics on the video loop. And I think that's awesome. I think that is just a total win of the video.
For past, present, and future episodes of GonstFM Off Air, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. You can leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a rating or leave comments on individual episodes on Spotify. And if you're listening to this episode on our YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell for notifications for future episodes, leaving a like on the video, or leaving us a comment down below. Any engagement helps. If you would like to come to a future GonstFM Station Head radio ritual, like New Year's Evil 3 on December 31st, if you would like to buy GonstFM or Uncle Ghoul merchandise, or if you would like to join the official Facebook groups Ghost Cosplay or GonstFam, all of this information can be found in the Linktree link in our show notes below. And so, our dearest Gonslings, that brings this week's episode to a close. Some of you we will see in Internet Land, and the rest of you we will see in Ghost Cosplay or in GonstFam. Take care of yourselves, and remember, until next time, in Gonst, we tronst. I'm Papa X.
And I'm Uncle Ghoul.
And we'll see you next time.